Hello, we'll go over the Merchant of Venice. Uh, we are on scene 7, where it says, Enter Portia with the Prince of Morocco and both their trains. So, the Prince of Morocco has come to woo Portia's hand in marriage, and Morocco is in Africa, so he is a dark complexioned prince, and Portia is, of course, the rich heiress of Belmont in Italy. So the Prince of Morocco has come to try his luck to see if he can win Portia's hand in marriage. And both of them enter the chamber where the three caskets, that is, one is made of gold, the other is made of silver, and the third is made of lead, where the three caskets are kept, and in one of them lies the portrait of Portia. So, if any of the wooers get or choose the correct casket in which Portia's portrait is kept, then they will win her hand. This is a this is a condition laid down by Portia's father just before his death. So, what it means is that only a person who truly loves Portia will choose the right casket. So, the Prince of Morocco and Portia enter with their trains. Train is the trading piece of rich embroidered cloth which is carried by servant. It hangs on the back of the royalty, and servants carry in the train of cloth. So Portia says, Go, draw aside the curtains and discover the several caskets to this noble prince. So Portia instructs one of the servants to draw aside the curtains and show the three caskets to the noble prince of Morocco. A curtain is drawn. Morocco, this first of gold, who this inscription bears, who chooseth me shall gain what many men desire. The second, silver, which this promise carries, who chooseth me shall get as much as he deserves. This third, dull lead, with warning all is blunt, who chooseth me must give and hazard all he hath. How shall I know if I do choose the right? So the inscription on the first casket, which is made of gold, the inscription on this casket says, Who chooseth me shall gain what many men desire. The second inscription on the silver casket says, Who chooseth me shall get as much as he deserves. And the third casket, which is made of ordinary lead metal, and it seems to Morocco that it carries a blunt warning, a straight warning. Who chooseth me must give and hazard all he hath. So, hazard means that he must risk all he has if he chooses the leaden casket. And he asks Portia how he will know if he chooses the right casket. Portia, the one of them contains my picture, prince. If you choose that, then I am yours withal. So Portia says that one of the three caskets contains a portrait, and if he chooses the casket which contains a portrait, then she will be his, he will marry him. Morocco, some god direct my judgment. So the Prince of Morocco uh, prays uh, to his god to direct his judgment so that he can choose the correct casket. Let me see. I will survey the inscriptions back again. So he says he will go over or read and try to understand the inscriptions on each of the caskets. What says this leaden casket? Who chooseth me must give and hazard all he hath. Must give for what? For lead, hazard for lead. This casket threatens. Men that hazard all do it in hope of fair advantages. A golden mind stoops not to shows of dross. I'll then give nor hazard aught for lead. So he reads the inscription on the leaden casket, and it says, whoever chooses the leaden casket must give and risk all that he has. Whatever wealth, whatever property, whatever riches he has, he must give all his wealth and he must risk all he has if he chooses the leaden casket. And he's taken aback and he thinks, must give for what? For lead. And so he thinks, should I give everything for an ordinary lead, or must I give something for something so ordinary as lead? Must I risk all I have for a very common metal like lead? And he decides that the casket threatens rather than promises anything. Men that hazard all do it in hope of fair advantages. So he says to himself that any man who risks all he has risks that with hope or expectation of much more in return. So just as a warrior goes forth into battle, he risks his life to win some treasure or the other. So he decides that he will not risk. So he says, golden mind stoops not to shows of dross. So he says to himself that, someone who has a golden mind that is full of learning and culture would not bend to shows of dullness and ordinariness like lead has. So he decides, I'll then give no hazard aught for lead. So he decides that he will not give nor risk anything he has or anything that may be contained in the leaden casket. Next he goes over what the silver casket says. What says the silver with a virgin hue? So he describes silver as a metal which has the hue or the complexion of a virgin. A virgin is an unmarried maiden. So unmarried maidens usually have fair and dazzling complexion. So he says that silver has a virgin hue, and he asks himself what the inscription on the silver casket is. And he reads the inscription and he says, who chooseth me shall get as much as he deserves. So he thinks about this inscription and he says, as much as he deserves. Pause there, Morocco, and weigh thy value with an even hand. If thou beest rated by thy estimation, thou dost deserve enough, and yet enough may not extend so far as to the lady. And yet to be afeard of my deserving were but a weak disabling of myself. As much as I deserve, why, that's the lady. I do in birth deserve her, and in fortunes, in graces, and in qualities of breeding, but more than these, in love I do deserve. What if I stray no further, but choose here? So he goes over the inscription on the silver casket, and he says, he thinks that if he chooses the silver casket, then he'll get as much as he deserves. And he weighs his own worth and says uh, that if he were to judge impartially of his own worth, then he deserves enough. But he thinks enough may not extend so far as to the lady. So it places Portia at a much higher level than he places himself. So if he were to choose a silver casket, he'll get as much as he deserves, but his worth is not equal to Portia's, which is much higher in his estimation. And he says, and he continues, to be afeared of my deserving were but a weak disabling of myself. So if he was afraid of whether he did deserve Portia, then that would weaken his strength. It would be a weak disabling of himself. Uh, and he continues, as much as I deserve, why, that's the lady. I do in birth deserve her. So in birth, he is born into a royal family. Portia is also a form of aristocracy or nobility. So he deserves her in birth and in fortunes. He has enough wealth, he has enough riches, and Portia is equal to him in fortune, in graces, so and in qualities of breeding. So in culture, in deportment, in the way they have been brought up, the Prince of Morocco has been brought up, and you know he's been formed. He has been formed with a great, so that he possesses a great deal of culture and uh, noble qualities. So, so is Portia equally well bred. But more than these, he says, in love I do deserve. So, more than all these, he says that his love for Portia stands much higher than anything that is worldly. Let me see once more, he continues, this saying graved in gold. So next he reads the inscription on the golden casket, and he says, who chooseth me shall gain what many men desire. Why, that's the lady. All the world desires her. From the four corners of the earth they come to kiss this shrine, this mortal breathing saint. The Hyrcanian deserts and the vasty wilds of wide Arabia are as thoroughfares now for princes to come view fair Portia. The watery kingdom whose ambitious head spits in the face of heaven is no bar to stop the foreign spirits, but they come as over a brook to see fair Portia. One of these contains her heavenly picture. So he reads the inscription on the golden casket, and the inscription says that anybody who chooses the golden casket will gain what many men desire to gain. And he says with a great deal of excitement and confidence that what many men desire is undoubtedly the Lady Portia. The whole world desires her. The whole world wishes to possess her. And he says, from the four corners of the earth, the suitors come to kiss the shrine. So the shrine, this holy personage is Portia. They come to woo the Princess Portia, and he calls her a mortal breathing saint. So she's so full of virtue and goodness that she's a living, breathing saint. And he continues, the Hyrcanian deserts. The Hyrcanian deserts are particularly a severe form of, contain a severe form of heat, and they come from the Hyrcanian deserts and the vasty wilds of wide Arabia. Arabia is nothing but a desert. So the suitors come from Arabia and they pass through the Hyrcanian deserts on their way to woo fair Portia. And these deserts are as thoroughfares. They're like roads for princes to come to view fair Portia. Princes of far off kingdoms come to see fair Portia through deserts. And the watery kingdom, whose ambitious head spits in the face of heaven, is no bar to stop the foreign spirits, but they come as over a brook to see fair Portia. So the water kingdom is the sea or the ocean, and the waves of the sea or the ocean, they almost touch the sky during the storm. But even the stormy sea is no hindrance to the ambitious spirits which who come uh, from foreign lands, and they come as though they're sailing over a small brook or a stream to see fair Portia. And he says one of these three contains a heavenly picture. So he says one of the three caskets contains a heavenly picture. And he considers, is it like that lead contains a, is it likely that lead would contain a picture? Twere damnation to think so. It were too gross to obscure, to rib her cerecloth in the obscure grave. So he says it's highly improbable that something so ordinary as lead would contain a picture of Portia. And he says, or should I think in silver she's immured? He wonders if he is clothed, if the portrait of Portia is wrapped in cloth in the silver casket. And he says silver is 10 times undervalued to tried gold. The value of silver is 10 times lower than gold. O sinful thought, never so rich a gem was set in worse than gold. So I think that Portia is so worthy or valuable that it's unlikely that her portrait would be kept in anything less than a golden casket. And he says they have in England a coin that bears the figure of an angel stamped in gold, but that's sculpted upon. But here in a golden bed lies all within. Deliver me the key, here do I choose, and thrive I as I may. So he says that in England they have a coin which bears the figure of an angel, but that is an engraving. But here in the golden casket, an angel, that is Portia herself, lies in the golden bed, and he asks for the key, and he says that he chooses the golden casket and thrive. He may prosper as he will. Portia gives him the key. There, take it, prince, handing him the key, and if my form lie there, then I am yours. So Portia hands him the key, and she says that if a portrait lies with him, then she will be his wife. She will belong to him. Morocco opens the golden casket, and he is astonished to see what lies with him, and he says, "Oh hell, what have we here? A carrion death within whose eyes, empty eye, there is a written scroll. I'll read the writing." From him. So he says that in the casket, far from there being a portrait of Portia, what is there is a skull, and in the empty eye of the skull, there's a written piece of paper which is rolled. There's a written scroll, and he says, "I'll read the writing." And what it says in the scroll, he opens the scroll and reads it. It says, "All that glitters is not gold. Often have you heard that told. Many a man his life hath sold, but my outside to behold. Gilded tombs do worms enfold. Had you been as wise as bold, young in limbs, in judgment old, your answer had not been inscrewed. Fare you well, your suit is cold. So the inscription in the scroll on the scroll says, all that glisters is not gold, all that shines is not gold. And that saying is so common that he must have heard it before. And it continues that many men have sold their lives, have died just to see the outside of a gold coin or a gold casket or anything which has that dull yellow, pale yellow shine. So many a man has risked and lost his life for this, just to see the outside of gold. And gilded tombs do worms enfold. So decorated tombs have nothing but worms within. So the golden casket contains nothing but nothing of worth. Had you been as wise as bold, young in limbs, in judgment old, your answer had not been inscrewed. So if Morocco had been as wise as he was brave and bold, and if he was young in physique, but carried a wise head on his shoulders, if he was old in his judgment, if he were to be that, his answer would not have been the written scroll on which this writing is kept. Fare you well, your suit is cold. So it wishes him goodbye, and it says from now on he must contain his desire, and his suit is as cold as ice. So Morocco takes it with a resigned air, and he says, resigns himself to his fate. Gold indeed, cold indeed, and labor lost. Then farewell heat and welcome frost. For sure adieu. I've too grieved the heart to take a tedious leave. Thus losers part. So he accepts his fate, and he says that all his hot burning desire has turned cold, and all his efforts have been lost. And he says to himself that from now on he must not speak to any other maiden in way of marriage, because that is one of the conditions laid down for any suitor who comes to try to choose a Portia. And he says to himself, farewell heat and welcome frost. And he bids Portia au revoir, he bids her adieu. And he says, I have too grieved the heart to take a tedious leave. So he says, he's too hurt to take a long ceremonious farewell. And he says, thus losers part, exits with his train. And so he leaves Belmont with his train. Portia, a gentle residence, draw the curtains go, let all of his complexion choose me so. So Portia says to herself, well, it was a gentle farewell, and she asks the servant to draw the curtains on the chamber which contains the casket, and she wishes anybody who is as dark as Morocco should choose her in the way the Prince of Morocco has chosen her.